The moment that stopped the world wasn't a movie premiere or a humanitarian speech. It was three simple, whispered words. I am hungry. The small voice cut through the respectful noise of the crowded arts center like a knife through silence, stopping Jamie Dornan mid-sentence as he turned to see a 7-year-old girl with braided hair and worn sneakers looking up at him with eyes that held too much knowledge for someone so young. How do you respond when a child's simple honesty reveals a truth that adults spend their lives trying to hide? When three words spoken with innocent courage expose a reality that will change everything you thought you knew about your purpose. What you're about to discover isn't just about hunger or charity or celebrity patronage, but about the moment when a child's vulnerability meets a champion's heart and creates a ripple effect that transforms an entire community. But what nobody knew was that this 7-year-old girl's confession would lead Jamie to uncover a hidden crisis affecting thousands of children in his own backyard. And his response would become the most powerful example of what it means to use your global platform for something bigger than yourself. Before we dive into this incredible story, let me know in the comments where you're watching from today. If you believe in the power of empathy and life-changing connections, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that will touch your heart and restore your faith in human goodness. Now, let's get into what really happened on that October afternoon that changed everything. The soft spotlights hummed softly overhead in the Belfast Arts and Culture Centre as Jamie Dornan stood before a group of about 50 children, their eager faces reflecting the warm glow of the stage where he had just finished a Q&A about his work with UNICEF, the smell of fresh coffee mixed with the lingering scent of the small pastry service that had been served earlier, creating an atmosphere of inspiration and possibility that filled the historic main hall. Jamie had come to the center as part of his foundation's youth mentorship program, expecting to spend an hour talking about the creative process and the importance of perseverance. His voice echoed slightly in the large space as he wrapped up his presentation, the sound bouncing off the high wooden ceiling. Does anyone have any questions about what we talked about today? He asked, scanning the sea of raised hands with a smile. The children were sitting cross-legged on the plush carpeted floor, their excitement palpable as they competed for his attention. He pointed to a boy in the front row who wanted to know about his favorite film role, then to a girl who asked about meeting Cillian Murphy. The questions came fast and enthusiastic, each child eager to connect with their hero in this intimate setting that felt worlds away from the packed Hollywood premieres where Jamie usually found himself. But then, from the back of the group, a small hand slowly rose into the air. It belonged to Zara Johnson, a 7-year-old girl whose grandmother had brought her to the event after hearing about it at their local community food bank. Zara's hair was neatly braided with colorful beads that caught the light as she moved, and her oversized t-shirt hung loose on her small frame, clearly a hand-me-down that had seen better days. Yes, sweetheart, Jamie said, kneeling down to get closer to the children's eye level. What's your question? Zara looked around nervously at the other children, then back at Jamie. Her voice was barely above a whisper when she spoke, but in the quiet hall every word carried with crystal clarity. Mr. Dornan, she said, her small hands fidgeting with the hem of her shirt. I don't have a question about movies. I just wanted to tell you that I'm hungry. The simple statement hit the room like a thunderbolt. The other children fell silent, some looking confused, others nodding in recognition of a truth they understood all too well. The adults in the room, volunteers and Arts Center staff, exchanged glances that spoke volumes about a reality they dealt with every day, but rarely discussed so openly. Jamie felt his heart stop for a moment as he processed what he had just heard. This wasn't a question about acting or fame or dreams for the future. This was a 7-year-old girl in a room full of people finding the courage to speak a truth that most adults would be too proud or too scared to admit. You're hungry right now, sweetheart? Jamie asked gently, moving closer to Zara. The little girl nodded, her eyes beginning to fill with tears as she realized that everyone was now looking at her. We didn't have breakfast this morning, Zara whispered, her voice cracking with the weight of a confession that felt too big for her small shoulders. And yesterday we only had crackers, For dinner because Grandma said we have to wait until her pension comes. The hall fell completely silent except for the soft hum of the air conditioning and the distant sounds of traffic outside. Jamie could feel the eyes of every adult in the room on him, waiting to see how he would respond to this moment of raw honesty from a child who had just laid her family struggle bare in front of strangers. But what happened next would prove that some people are born to rise to moments like these, to transform individual pain into collective action, to turn a child's vulnerability into a community strength. Jamie stood up slowly, his mind racing as he processed not just what Zara had said, but what it represented. How many other children in this room were hungry? How many families in this community were struggling with food insecurity while he had been focused on film festivals and photo shoots? Zara, he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. Thank you for being brave enough to tell me that. That took a lot of courage, and I want you to know that you did the right thing by speaking up. He turned to address the entire group, his voice growing stronger as he found his footing in this unexpected moment. How many other kids here are hungry right now? He asked, and slowly, hesitantly, about a dozen small hands rose into the air. The sight of those raised hands hit Jamie like a physical blow. These weren't statistics or news reports about childhood hunger. These were real children sitting in front of him, admitting to a need that should never exist in a developed country like this. Okay, he said, pulling out his phone with determination that surprised even himself. Here's what we're going to do. I'm calling every local grocery store and catering company in a 5-mile radius, and we're going to make sure every single one of you gets a hot meal right now. Not tomorrow, not next week, but right now. The children's faces lit up with a mixture of disbelief and hope as Jamie began making phone calls. Within 30 minutes, delivery drivers were arriving at the arts center with bags of food from local businesses, all paid for by Jamie's personal credit card, without a second thought about the cost. But as he watched the children eat, Jamie realized that this moment was about so much more than one meal. This was about a systemic problem that required a systemic solution, and he was in a unique position to do something about it. Zara, he said, sitting down next to the little girl who was now happily eating a cheeseburger and fries. You just taught me something really important. You taught me that sometimes the most important questions aren't about movies at all. Over the next few weeks, Jamie threw himself into understanding the scope of childhood hunger in his community. He met with food bank directors, social workers, and school administrators. He learned that 1 in 6 children in Northern Ireland faced food insecurity, that many kids relied on school meals as their primary source of nutrition, and that weekends and school breaks were the hardest times for families struggling to put food on the table. But what he discovered next would transform his understanding of his own purpose and lead to one of the most impactful charitable initiatives in local UK history. Working with the Jamie Dornan Foundation, he launched the No Child Goes Dark program, a comprehensive initiative that went far beyond traditional food drives. The program established permanent food pantries in community centers across the region, created weekend backpack programs that sent food home with children who qualified for free school meals, and partnered with local restaurants to provide emergency meal vouchers for families in crisis. But the most innovative part of the program was what Jamie called Zara's Spotlight. For every major media interview or red carpet event he attended, a significant donation was made, and a local business pledged to donate meals to hungry children. Fans could participate by texting a simple donation code, creating a direct connection between Jamie's visibility and meals for children in need. The program exploded beyond anyone's expectations. Within 6 months, it had raised over $300,000 and provided more than 100,000 meals to children across the country. Other celebrities began launching similar initiatives in their own communities, creating a nationwide movement that traced its origins back to one 7-year-old girl's courage to speak her truth. But the most powerful moment came a year later when Jamie returned to the same arts center for the program's anniversary celebration. Zara was there, now 8 years old and noticeably healthier, her grandmother beaming with pride as she watched her granddaughter take the microphone. "Mr. Jamie," Zara said, her voice now strong and confident, "I want to thank you for listening to me when I was hungry. But I also want to tell you something else. I'm not hungry anymore, and neither are my friends because you taught us that it's okay to ask for help when we need it." The room erupted in applause, but Jamie found himself fighting back tears as he realized the full impact of what had started with 3 simple words from a brave little girl. "You know what I learned from Zara that day?" Jamie said, taking the microphone back. "I learned that sometimes the most important thing we can do as actors, as public figures, as human beings, is not to have all the answers, but to listen when someone has the courage to tell us what the real questions are." He looked out at the crowd of children, families, and community leaders who had gathered to celebrate a program that had grown far beyond anything he had imagined. Zara didn't just tell me she was hungry. She reminded me that my platform isn't just about movies. It's about using whatever influence I have to make sure that no child ever has to choose between speaking up about their needs and staying silent about their pain. As the celebration continued around them, Jamie and Zara sat together on the hall floor, sharing a piece of cake and talking about dreams for the future. But this time, those dreams weren't limited by hunger or uncertainty. They were as limitless as the courage of a 7-year-old girl who had changed the world by simply telling the truth, because sometimes the most powerful moments in our lives don't come from our greatest victories or our most impressive achievements. They come from our willingness to listen when someone trusts us with their vulnerability, to act when action is needed, and to remember that true greatness isn't measured by the box office records we break, but by the lives we touch and the problems we solve along the way. And that day, as Zara Johnson finished her cake and ran off to play with her friends, she carried with her the knowledge that her voice mattered, that her needs were important, and that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply tell someone when you're hungry, because you never know who might be listening, and you never know how ready they might be to help.